Time to take a look at what's grabbing headlines around the world. And we're joined on the set with Florence Villeminot.
Hey, Will.
Hey, Flo. A lot of papers focusing on the EU summit that kicked off in Brussels, this two-day summit. British Prime Minister Theresa May got a warm welcome there. She unveiled her plans to ensure the rights of EU citizens living in Britain.
Of course, that's one of the key issues that everyone is looking on as these Brexit negotiations kick off. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that it was a good start. But let's take a look at what the German papers are saying about it. They say, look, this was a generously generous proposal. Those are the words of Die Welt here. The idea was to create a good mood in Brussels as these negotiations kick off. But you have to be very careful and read the fine print, according to Die Welt, because Theresa May has categorically rejected the authority of essentially the European Court of Justice, and she has said that once Brexit goes through, the European Court of Justice won't essentially be responsible for EU citizens, and that includes the 3 million of EU citizens actually living in the UK. And so Die Welt says, look, this summit got off to a warm start, but May and the EU are headed for a clash.
Many European papers are holding out hope, though Brexit won't actually go through, and indeed so some of the British press as well.
That's right. We saw that earlier today in the French papers. Lots of French papers hope that this Brexit negotiation won't actually go through. You can see here The Independent, which remember was very much against Brexit, with this photo here of Emmanuel Macron, the French president, and Theresa May there, giving each other perhaps a welcome kiss. And you can see that title there, Whisper It, You Don't Have to Leave. A little bit of wishful thinking there. I must admit, I always want to know what they're talking about when they're whispering things.
They're always awkward photos. It makes me think of the George Michael song, Careless Whisper. Staying with The Independent, they're focusing on another top story in the UK, the aftermath of the deadly blaze at the Grenfell Tower in London. Emergency tests being done around the country on these council blocks.
Absolutely. The government, if we take a look at the front page again, you'll see that headline that's talking about that. The government confirmed that a total of 600 council blocks have been fitted with cladding that needs to undergo testing to determine whether it's safe. 11 towers have already failed the test. Essentially, they're covered with the same flammable aluminum that's believed to have fueled the fire at the Grenfell Tower. So you can see here, this is a quote from one of several hundred people living in these blocks saying, "We feel helpless." They're calling for answers from the government. And there's a cartoon in the Times today that shows just what a major problem this could become for Theresa May and the Conservative government. You can see that they're looking at these buildings that are at risk, showing them as this domino effect that could come and crush Theresa May.
Let's move stateside now. Many papers reacting to the release of new footage of a white police officer fatally shooting a black man after a traffic stop last year. This comes shortly after the officer was acquitted of all charges.
Lots of emotion in the U.S. media, as you can imagine. Now, millions of people had already seen the aftermath of this shooting. So this is the shooting of Philando Castile, because his girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, had live streamed it on Facebook. But now, essentially, the dash cam, the dashboard camera of the police officer, has been released to the public. And as you can see, this is someone who watched it, someone who knew Philando Castile. It made me hard to breathe. The video is indeed very hard to watch. And it has really raised questions about this verdict. Why was the police officer completely acquitted? Well, you can read more about it in the Washington Post. It says, look, we have to accept this verdict, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't question the verdict. It appears that Mr. Castile did everything asked of him. So why did he end up losing his life? Did his race play a role in his car being pulled over and in the officer's decision to shoot him? The Washington Post calls for an independent review. We need better answers and wonders, can the Trump administration acknowledge that need?
Well, let's move on now to another verdict that's getting a lot of attention. In Israel, a new court ruling explicitly forbids flight attendants for Israeli airlines from asking women to switch seats to accommodate ultra-Orthodox men who won't sit next to them.
Now, this particular incident happened in 2015. It was on a El Al flight. But several papers, including here the Jerusalem Post, point out that it has really developed into a familiar pattern, and that's why there was this court ruling. The court says that El Al, but other Israeli companies as well, can't ask women to change seats because of Haradeh, so those are ultra-Orthodox requests. Now, essentially, not only is this a ruling, but the woman involved in the original case, is going to be compensated as well. She's getting a lot of attention in the Israeli papers as well. You can see this photo of her in Haaretz. She's 82 years old, a Holocaust survivor, Renee Rabinowitz, and she herself is Orthodox, an Orthodox religious woman. Now, she spoke to Yediot Aharonot. We can take a look at their article, and she has a message for women in Israel in general. When they encounter an extremist religious ruling like this, they should fight it in their own way, she says.
Yeah. Change of policy, not the seat. Florence Villamano with a roundup of the international papers.